First of all, I didn't know I was going to need my Kleenex. I'm putting all of you guys on gallery though, so that I can see all of you and not just my face. And I have learned a lot. I've learned, number one, that recovery is about always learning. It's about always learning from anyone you can learn from, anytime. And that means that even if it's people that I might generally disagree with their opinion and their views on whatever, they still probably have something to teach me that I don't know. They still probably have some kind of wisdom that might help me. So, you know, my story is, as you all know, I am a sugar addict, but I didn't know that sugar was the gateway drug. And so I got caught up in a whirlwind of hell because of that, you know. And so when I was 3 years old, I remember climbing on the counter to eat Johnson's baby aspirin because they were tangy and they were sweet. And I had to have them. I just had to. And I climbed up on that counter in a neighborhood called Park Merced in San Francisco. And I remember the light coming in through the window and the dust in the air. And I remember peeking over my shoulder. I hope mom doesn't catch me, you know, because I knew I wasn't supposed to be eating baby aspirin. I knew it wasn't a snack. I knew it wasn't food, but it hit my dopamine reward center, you know. And when I did my sugar with Bitten did my sugar. And after I told my mom, you know, I remember doing this, and she said to me, she said that when I was a baby and I was bottle fed, they just didn't even ask her if she wanted to nurse. Back in those days, they just bound you up and gave you a shot, and that was it, you know, because you didn't want to ruin your body. And by the way, you got to smoke and drink alcohol while you were pregnant too. And so, you know, I was, my mom was a smoker, and it kept her slim, you know, so she kept smoking away during her pregnancy with me. And so I think I was already born addicted, and I got my formula, and then I was introduced to, you know, Gerber's baby food way too early for what they tell us now. And baby food carrots is all I wanted to eat. My mom said she took me to the doctors because she thought I had jaundice. And what I had was I was discolored from all of the keratin in the baby food carrots. So I already was demanding, you know, what I wanted. And I remember my mom, like, we didn't have a lot of candy around, but when we did, she didn't put any limits on it. So I remember having like bags of Tootsie Pops, and I would always want to have a Tootsie Pop, and she would let me, you know, as long as I ate my lunch and did that kind of thing. And so, and then I ended up with some autoimmune issues very young, and I had my nails were like this thick with psoriasis and flaky and scaly. And so now I was this pariah on the playground. And so now I was unlovable, and I was weird, and I was, you know, something was wrong with me. And so I felt horrible. And so I loved to read. And for some reason I could read, like when I was 3 years old. Judy is always saying to me, did you read that already? You know, where my husband is like, he gets crazy with my daughter and I, because she's like me, a whole page just jumps into my head. I don't know why, but that's just the way I am. So I was reading like really big chapter books. Like, for instance, I read in the 3rd grade Gone with the Wind, you know, and so I escaped into books. So I've always said that books were like my first drug of choice, because I didn't know sugar was my first drug of choice, right? And so I ended up, you know, just feeling like this big nerd and feeling like out of sorts and everything. And we moved out of the Bay Area, or out of San Francisco, into the south of the city, and into a huge apartment complex. And the older kids there thought it was fun to get like their little sisters and brothers high. Well, I was the oldest in my family, but some of these younger kids were my friends. And someone offered us a joint when I was 9 years old on a playground, and I smoked it. And I felt like I could fly. I felt like I could conquer the world, you know. And I didn't seek it really, but I just kept kind of like, you know, whenever it was offered, I would do it. And then when I was 13, 5 girls died in one car accident, and they were all friends of mine. And one was an incredibly close friend of mine. In fact, I'm still in touch with her mother, her sister, and her 2 brothers, and she's still one of my mom's closest friends. And that the day that happened, I had other trauma. You know, my mom was a single parent, and I had horrible migraine headaches that were so bad I would throw up. And she would scream over my head that I caused my own effing headaches and this and that. And my sister would stand there and watch helplessly. And, you know, I to this day feel like it's such a surreal memory. But my sister says, you're exactly right, exactly how it happened, because she was standing there as a bystander. And in some ways, I'm really glad she was, because I think we don't want to believe what we remember, right? And I can tell you, through my recovery, I have a great deal of empathy and forgiveness for my mother. She was a struggling single parent who had her own issues and her own trauma and her own drama going on, and I know I'm not perfect. That's something my recovery has taught me. I'm not perfect, and I'm not here to cast stones. So I'm just telling you that, these things happened to me, and they prepared me to want to escape, right? And so, and I always had that in me, to want to find something to flip that switch, to make me feel different, to make me feel better. And this really flipped my switch. So from the time I was 13 in 1979 until the time I was 17 in 1981, I went balls to the wall using. And my drug of choice was yours. And if you offered it to me, I didn't ask questions, and I put it in my body. And I used heavy. I got kicked out of high school in the 9th grade. I remember smoking a joint at school and feeling really crazy, like something was off, and later finding out it was laced with PCP. I laid my head down on the railroad tracks a block and a half away from my school, from San Mateo High School. And I watched a train coming towards my head, you guys. I watched a train coming towards my head, and I knew I was going to die, and I couldn't lift my body off of the tracks. I couldn't do it. And some gentleman came along, and he lifted me off the tracks, and he could have done anything that he wanted to do to me. Now, I don't talk about God a lot, but I'm going to talk about God right now. I know there's a God, because God has saved me too many times for me to not believe that there is one. And you don't have to believe in God, but I do. And I believe that this man was an angel. I truly do, because he could have done anything he wanted to me, and he didn't. He put me on a bus. He actually got on a public transportation with me and made sure I got home safe. And he wrote me a poem, and I still have that poem. And I still know his name, Paul Hurteau. And I've never seen him before, and I've never seen him since. And, I know that so many times I could have died from the disease of addiction. There's so many times I could have literally died. And for some reason, God decided, he wasn't done with me yet. So I got clean when I was 17, not really because I wanted to, but because my Aunt Linda wanted me to, because I had been kicked out of high school, and I took my California GED, and I had been going to continuation high school, which is really a joke. She thought, oh, just, let me send you back to Nebraska, and you can go to beauty school. My mom was from Nebraska, and, she said, you're so good with hair and makeup. And I was, and my dad was a barber, and, I liked the industry and whatever. So I didn't know what else to do. I was in a very abusive relationship with a young man who was 5 years older than me. And I felt like I was going to die. I had never really heard the term addiction, but I was raised around it my whole life. And San Francisco, addiction is rampant. I mean, it is just everywhere. And drugs were a norm, and they still are. And it was pretty socially acceptable to be using dope, and so I didn't know, and I didn't know what I was in for. So I get to Nebraska, and I go through detox at my aunt's house, and I had no idea what was happening to me. And I was like this, shaking, and my voice was like this, and a series of events happened, and she said, you're getting help, because my mom didn't send me with a warning label. She just sent me, oh, I think Anna would be, you guys will get along great, whatever. My mom was like, phew, get her off of my plate and into somebody else's. And so I go to beauty school, and my Aunt Linda insists that I do something different, and I went to my first 12-step meeting, and it was at a halfway house. And I was a pretty cute kid. I don't think I'm bad looking for 57. And when I was 17, let me tell you, I was pretty hot. So some guy got up and got all of the men from upstairs in the halfway house. They all came down to the meeting. They weren't going to come to the meeting, but there was this hot chick there. And one of those men was my next drug of choice. He was a man who was 13 years older than me. And so I went from one drug to another drug, in my opinion. And all I did was abstain from using. And I didn't understand at the time that that's not recovery. Abstinence from drugs is not recovery. Recovery is a change in my thoughts and my actions, but I didn't know that. So my thoughts and my actions didn't change. And so I was in for a world of hurt because of that. So I ended up, leaving the state with this guy, and we ended up in Southern California. Nobody knew where I was. I mean, I can't even imagine being my mother. I can't imagine the hell that I put her through. And so, I end up finding out I'm pregnant, and now I'm homeless in Los Angeles, and pregnant. I'm shaking oranges off of trees, and my ex-husband, I didn't know he was using dope again, and I wasn't using. And then I started, I had started smoking a little pot, but when I found out I was pregnant, I quit. And I don't know why. I don't know why I was able to do that, because that's not everybody's story. I have sponsee after sponsee, and I know woman after woman who has used through their pregnancy, even though they didn't want to. So, again, God showed up for me and helped me to do that. But guess what? I just thought I stopped using. So I ended up getting married to my ex because I didn't know what else to do. And it was horrible. I found out like 2 days before we got married that he was banging dope again. And so I was always without food, always insecure. And one day I just felt so bad and I wanted to feel better, and I wasn't using drugs. So I grabbed a bag of powdered sugar, a 1-pound sack of powdered sugar, and I mixed it with water. And I ate every single bit of it. I squeezed it out of the bag. I turned the bag inside out and licked it. And I did not, I would not have stopped. If I could have gotten another bag of powdered sugar, if I would have had another bag of powdered sugar, I would have eaten it. I'm not lying. And still, I didn't connect the dots, that sugar had anything to do with it. And so anyway, 2 kids later, and I moved back to Nebraska, and I'm using again. And this time I'm saying to myself, I'm justifying it because, I was substituting one drug for another. I won't do the hard stuff. So, all I was doing was smoking pot and doing a little drinking. And a lot of people nowadays call that California clean. And I've learned from Bitten Johnson that pot is one of the most psychoactive substances you can put into your body. And I believe it because my experience tells me that. My mind was not my own. I remember looking at a piece of trim on the floor that the paint was scraped off, and I always thought it was like a bug, even though I knew that paint was scraped off of that piece of floorboard every single time. That's how paranoid I was. And in Nebraska, they have door-to-door food salesmen called the Schwann's man, right? Well, they don't have those in California, and my ex was dealing drugs. So I thought, this is the feds every other Wednesday night pulling up in front of my house, right? And so I convinced my ex-husband that these people are watching us, and he goes outside and says to them, what are you doing here every other Wednesday night? And he's like, I'm just selling ice cream, man. So this is how low, I got. And things were horrible. My ex-husband would be gone all night. My kids, they were so not cared for. I didn't know how to care for them. They were falling asleep by themselves, not being tucked in. They were falling asleep in heaps on the floor. They were getting themselves cold hot dogs out of the refrigerator. I am telling you, I had to overcome some deep shame to stay in recovery and to stay on this journey. Because if I would have just judged myself by the actions of my past, I would never have grown. And I am not ashamed to say that I'm an addict, and I'm not ashamed of my past, because I did those things not knowing how to live, because I didn't know how to live. And to me, recovery has taught me how to live. It's taught me how to be a whole human being. And I can forgive myself. And I've heard other people's stories, and I never compare. Somebody else's story isn't worse than mine or less worse than mine. It's just their story. What I've learned is that everybody's story comes with its own dose of pain, and nobody says, oh, sign me up, I want to get clean, because they're having a good time, right? They don't do that. So anyway, I ended up going to another meeting. This guy that I met, he told me that he had been clean for 10 years, and he said I should come to a meeting. And I felt like one of those cartoons that an anvil had went through my body and hit my feet. And I said, you know what, I should. And I went home and I smoked the rest of my pot. And then I waited for my ex-husband to get home from banging dope, and I told him I was going to get clean, and if he didn't want to get clean, he could get out. I don't know what it was, but I felt something so strong inside of me. I didn't want to live the way I was living anymore. I didn't want to live, and I didn't want to die. It was a very, very tough spot to be in. And so I did. I went to a meeting the next night, and they said something in that meeting that is the reason that I wrote the book that I wrote, An Altered Spirit. They said that failures are only temporary setbacks, that they're not links in an unbreakable chain. And what I heard was hope, and I heard that I could get free, and that my mistakes don't define me, and my failures don't define me, and that I could change. And so I started taking suggestions. In 4 days, me and my husband stayed clean together, and it was the best 4 days of my marriage ever. And then he sold my car and he banged dope all night, and I had a choice I had to make. You guys, I didn't know how to write a check. I didn't know how to pay a bill. I was 17 when I met him, and I had 2 kids. And I kicked him out of the house. And I found out apparently he didn't know how to pay bills either, because we were like $80,000 in debt. And I'm telling you, things look desperate. But I stayed clean no matter what, a day at a time. And I had this sponsor that they told me she was going to be my sponsor, and she only had 6 months clean. And I think some people think that like you have to have like some kind of magic formula to be a sponsor, to be somebody's capability partner, or to help someone else. And I think you only need 2 things. You need care and you need hope. You need to care about that other person, and you need to be able to hope that that other person can change. And that's it. And that's what Julie had for me. And she told me some things I didn't know. She told me it was normal for an addict to want to use, but just because I wanted to, that didn't mean I had to. And so I learned how to not use, even though I wanted to. And that's the first thing I think an addict has to learn to do. They have to learn to not use even when they want to, whatever that thing is. And I don't differentiate, because I'll tell you, 9 years clean off of drugs and alcohol, I almost killed myself. And then I was only using food. Ben and Jerry's was my drug of choice. In fact, my butt has the nickname Ben and Jerry's. I wasn't heavy. In fact, I was like 18% body fat. I was lifting weights. I was going to step aerobics. I was eating healthy all day long. And then I was eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's and gummies at night on my couch. Just, and I was doing 12-step stuff. I was going to meetings. I was sponsored. I was being of service, all of that stuff. And I see this all the time in the rooms, and it breaks my heart. I see people dying of sugar addiction in 12-step programs. I buried one of my own friends with a above the knee amputation at 50 years old, who still had children in her home. And last time I saw her, she had a cigarette, a bag of Doritos, and a big old pop in her hands. And that's my last memory of her. And she knows that she knew that I helped sugar addicted people. And I don't think she understood why it was my passion, because sugar is the gateway drug. And it's setting all of these kids up for a death sentence that we're seeing the fruits of now. We're seeing 100,000 kids dead from addiction. Suicide is on the rise, and I know how psychoactive of a drug sugar is. I know from my own experience. I wasn't using what I thought were drugs, right? But I was using drugs because I didn't know they were drugs. I didn't know that food was also psychoactive, that sugars and seed oils and grains are incredibly psychoactive foods. And so here I was, trying to get well, and I couldn't get well, and I got help for that, but not the sugar, so I asked for help to not kill myself and all that. And then it was like about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I saw Bitten Johnson on a Quit Sugar Summit, and Mike Collins was interviewing her, and she talked about being an alcoholic, and then she talked about the food, and I was like, oh my God, she's telling my story. She's exactly telling my story. Cigarettes, substances. Food is a substance. Food is, oh my God, it all makes sense. Oh my God, this is the missing link. This is the missing piece of the puzzle. And at the time, you guys, I hadn't eaten sugar regularly for 5 or 6 years, because I have 5 autoimmune diseases, and I was a primal health coach. And I learned that I had celiac disease. And when I got off the grains, I thought, what else could make me feel so bad physically and mentally, right? Because like this fatigue lifted off of me when I quit gluten. And this energy came back to me, and my joints felt better, and it was crazy. And so I wanted to look into that. I wanted to learn more, because my recovery taught me learn more. If you take a suggestion and it works, and go ahead and learn more, and so I did. And so I would only, like at the holidays or on a special occasion, I would eat this or that, mostly like C's candy, to be quite honest, because my brother-in-law would send me like a 5-pound box of my drug food of choice, and I would feel so sick and so bad. But the whole time that I was eating clean, right, I was in the cookbooks. Like, how can I make this stew, that stew? What flavor, what part of the world can we go to? So for me, like the obsession and compulsion about food was loud in between my ears, no matter what I was eating. And so it wasn't until I, took the sugar and realized what was really going on, that one bite was too many. And I started realizing, okay, making keto treats doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me because it wakes up the obsession and compulsion, because what I was missing was the link between some of these foods that are hyper palatable, and my brain, right? And everybody's brain is different and everybody's wired differently. So I'm not telling anyone else what to do. I'm telling you my story is my food is simple and I like it that way. I like my life simple. I like petting my dog. I like going out into the sun. I like my daughter calling me her little mama. Oh, you're so cute. You're so short, my little stubs. I like having my daughter be able to tell me anything. You know, I like being able to say no to my oldest, my son, who's going through some mental crisis. I like being able to have boundaries with him and put the responsibility for his recovery on himself, you know, because I know for a fact that's going to empower him more than me trying to be responsible for something I can't fix. I can't fix somebody else. I understand that today through my recovery process. I have a great deal of freedom. And you guys, my God has a sense of humor. So in that same meeting that I met my ex-husband, I met my next husband. I was 3 months clean. And this year in October, we'll be married 30 years. And he is an incredible man. And I had boundaries because this little gal with 6 months clean taught me how to say no. She said, you know what? You need to learn how to say no to a lot of things. And she said, I want you to write down a list of things that absolutely you do not want in a man. And I wrote this list, and some guy asked me out, and he called me the day before we were going out. And I said, we're not going out, because he checked off one of those boxes on the list. And Julie assured me that I needed to stick to the list. You know, I didn't know how to value myself. I didn't know that what she was doing, that she was teaching me to value my values and to live out my values and live out my worth. And you know how you do that? You do that like this. No, I'm not going out with you, you know, because you feel like you're doing something wrong at first. When you start changing, you feel like you're doing something wrong. I don't know why that is, but it's not true. It's the red dog telling me, Anna, you know, you can't speak up for yourself. You can't matter. And you know what? If I don't matter, no one else matters. And that's just a fact that I've learned. The only way I can love is to be loved. That's the only way that I know that it really works. I hear people say it all the time in early recovery. Well, I like to give. I'm not a taker, as if accepting help is selfish. I'll tell you what's selfish: to not accept help when you know you need it. That's selfish. And I can tell you that I'm a better giver because I'm a good receiver of help. If someone wants to help me, I say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your support. And if I need something and I need some time from somebody, or if I need some advice from somebody, or I need a favor from somebody, I ask and I reciprocate. I don't feel like that's selfish. Most people that help other people appreciate being useful. I do. I appreciate it if I can help lift someone or brighten someone's day. You know, what I know is I never want to go back. That's what I know. And it's not a lot of work to stay clean. It's a little teeny, little tiny, little teaspoon at a time. You know, this is what my first sponsor told me. How do you eat an elephant, Anna? One bite at a time, you know? And my second sponsor told me, you know, that I don't have to shit in my own nest. She said, birds don't shit in their own nest. And that's true. I didn't know that was true, but just go under any underpass and you'll see all the pigeon poop is on the ground. It's not in the nest, right? And so she would just gently say to me, honey, why do you want to shit in your own nest? When I was harming myself, right? With my thoughts or my actions. And these things stick with me. And I'm just telling you my story. This is my personal story. I'm not trying to make it pretty or bend it into anything that it's not. And my sponsor now, she tells me, don't let anyone dim your light, Anna, period. Don't let anyone dim your light. And I love that. And I think that goes along with what Bitten Johnson says. We want to improve. We want to improve our actions and our reactions. We want to improve our behaviors. But we don't want to change our personalities. We want to become more of who we were meant to be and not be covered up and dope sick with all the food and the scrolling and the sex and the drugs and the whatever it is. It's got to be, you know, that we're clean, and then we can get clean on the inside. But I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to close, and that is that stopping the use of whatever it is that's harming you, that's only the beginning of recovery. Recovery is a day-to-day journey, and I want to die clean and free. That's how I want to die. So that's, that's all I've got, guys. I love being clean. I'm incredibly passionate about recovery because I think recovery is life. It's a set of, if you want to know what I believe about it, just read my book. It's short. I go for the heart and the soul. Forget the brain. Your brain has a disease. It's not going to think you into a good corner. I can promise you that. We have to act our way into better behavior, and then our thinking and our feelings will change because we'll see the results. You know what? I learned to write a check. I learned to do things. I'm a person that they want me to be on the board of the library, and people in my community know I'm in recovery and that I'm a recovering addict. My husband's an upstanding citizen in our community. He's an interventional cardiologist, and I don't hide who I am or what I'm about because I would have to die then. I'm not trying to twist myself into something somebody else wants me to be. I am not ashamed to have the disease of addiction. I am not ashamed about it, and I won't act like I am for anyone. I don't care if it makes them uncomfortable. They're the ones with the problem, not me, because addiction is a fact. It's a reality, and I don't shy away from it, and that's all I've got. Thanks for allowing me to share and celebrate my 33 years with you.